Maybe you've been that kind of person who's dealt with some kind of loss, whether it's divorce or a loss of a loved one, or maybe you lost a job. Whatever brokenness you have dealt with, how do you get through it? How do you get through a breakup? How do you get through a loss of magnitude that affects you emotionally and mentally? Well, stay tuned to another episode of Living Fully Fit as we dive in on how to recover from the brokenness. Well, welcome to another episode of Living Fully Fit. I'm Coach AJ, and if you're jumping onto this podcast for the first time, this whole podcast is designed to help you become a better version of yourself, whether it's physical fitness, mental fitness, emotional fitness, relational fitness, and spiritual fitness. And today's segment is about relational fitness and the aspect of how do you recover from brokenness. So it doesn't only just affect your relational fitness, but your emotional and mental fitness as well. So this mixture of fitness is very broad, but also we're going to break it down step by step. We're going to stay away from cliches. We're going to stay away from catchy phrases of how to recover from brokenness, how to recover from a loss, how to recover from things that are hard and difficult. Because I'm sure you've dealt with this before, where a lot of times when you deal with a loss or a breakup or a divorce or something of some kind of magnitude, people tend to try to resolve it by giving you that catchy phrase, those little just isms that they're trying their best, kind of, but it's really not doing the trick. We're also going to look at what are some solutions besides just putting a band-aid on it and saying, well, get over it, move on, forget about it, move on, those kind of things. Find a hobby. We're going to look at different aspects, different things to help you improve, help you to overcome. Not get over it, but overcome hardship, overcome brokenness, overcome pain. So I'm sure you've dealt with it at some point where you've dealt with a breakup, or you've dealt with a divorce, or you dealt with the loss of a job, or someone that you're close to has died, and you're trying to figure out how do you pick up the pieces of great loss. And the thing is, we don't want to diminish what your version of loss is. This isn't what this is about. So you might have a big loss, to someone else it might be minor, but to you it's major. And so we're not going to categorize loss here. We're just going to say loss is loss. Pain is pain. Brokenness is brokenness. So regardless of what category other people, other external sources come up with, it's still a loss to you. It's still pain to you. So how do you overcome that? How do you grieve, but then also find healing with loss? I myself have been divorced multiple times. I've dealt with hard breakups. I've lost jobs. I've been financially set, but also financially broken. I've dealt with different aspects of my life. And I know from my personal experience, it wasn't just some catch all kind of easy cookie cut design that helped me overcome it. It was a process. It wasn't just this catchy phrase that, oh, I got this aha moment. Now I'm good now. No, that's not how it goes. The path to healing, the path to overcoming hard times isn't this easy path either. There's going to be ups and downs, ebbs and flows, and it takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen because of some magic formula. It's going to take a process of you dealing with it, of you recognizing it, and of you taking control of the situation. Because I get it, there are some things we have no control over. We can't control death. We can't control when someone leaves us. Or we can't control many times when someone fires us. But how do you control you after the fact? And that's the big thing. Many people lose something, they get lost, but they don't ask the question, well, what part of this can I control now? After the part that I had no control of has happened, what can I control after the fact? And that's the question you have to ask yourself is, what can I control? What can I do? What's my next step? You can say, well, this happened, this happened, this happened, and poor me, all you want. And there is a time and place for that. I have felt sorry for myself before. And you know what? It's okay. It's part of human nature to feel sorry for ourselves from time to time. But we shouldn't settle on that. And we shouldn't stay in that mind frame too long. Otherwise, we become the victim. And no one moves on, no one grows, no one perseveres if you're the victim. If you really want to try to be the victor, you have to overcome being the victim. And the only way you do that is by recognizing what you can control in the situation. Because again, we don't have control of everything that happens to us. Some things happen that we have zero control of. But then what do you do after the fact? After you get into that car accident, what can you do after the fact? After that person breaks up with you, files for divorce, fires you, whatever it is, what do you do after the fact? Because again, you can't control what they do, but you can control your response. Your response is going to pave the way for your path. It's going to pave the way for your restoration, for your healing, or it's going to pave the way for your destruction down the line. But you have to really recognize it. So let's break it down a little bit. Let's say you're dealing with a breakup. I've dealt with many of them. Some I conducted, that I initiated the breakup, and some that, I had zero control. So let's talk about the ones you have zero control in. Because at least the ones that you control with a breakup, I've identified the issue, the problem, and the solution is cut ties and sever the relationship. I get that. But what if you are the victim to the breakup? And again, you could be the victim temporarily for the situation. So let's say you deal with the breakup. What do you do then? Well, you have to ask yourself, what do I do next? Do I wallow in sorrow and stay sad and depressed and eat a pint of ice cream? Or do I figure out, okay, what's my next step after this? Can I get over this person? Absolutely, you can. Even if it was a great relationship and this person just didn't want anything to do with you, because maybe they found someone else or they found a new path in life. You've heard all the different reasons and rationales and stories and excuses. I'm sure you have. But then what do you do after that? The only way you can grow is by not just moving on, because people will tell you, well, just move on, grow, get over it. That's so catchy and it's cringy, honestly, because it doesn't create empathy. It doesn't help the situation. But what should you experience? What should you be thinking? Not getting over it, not moving on, but what is your next step? What is my next step after this breakup? Well, first of all, I know I should still continue to live, continue to eat, continue to sleep, continue to work, continue to do your typical habits. I get it. Some of those habits were with that person, but then how do you develop different habits? What did you do before that person? Become that person again. Find things that can help improve you as a person, helps grow you. Maybe that's reading more. Maybe that's taking a class, going to the gym. Those things that help improve you, that help propel you in a good direction. Because it's easy to get into the pint of ice cream, the alcohol, the drugs, whatever it is. That's the easy thing. Just to dive into that and spiral and make the situation worse. But to make the situation better is by self-improvement. The only way you're going to distract yourself in a way for actual healing is self-improvement. And that's how you identify those things. That's how you, quote unquote, get over it. And you're not going to ever get over it because you might run into that person and those emotions trigger. But then what you have to realize is, guess what? You're on a different path now. You're in the path of self-improvement. You're in the path of self-healing, of understanding the situation because maybe you had a part to play in it. You have to let yourself grieve, but then start making those steps to grow yourself, to improve yourself, to realize maybe you had a part in it, maybe you didn't, but maybe you did. And how can you learn from that? Every situation you deal with is a lesson learned. Every breakup, every divorce, every job loss is a lesson learned. But then again, you have situations like a death. There is no lesson learned there. There's just good memories to remember. As a person who's lost some people in my life that were close to me, I understand that feeling of, well, why did this happen? I was close to this person. This is rocking my world. My aunt died in her late 30s, and that was very heartbreaking to see that this person who was just a light in the world just up and just poof, and the smoke died. She was dealing with a cancer that just was very aggressive, and it came out of nowhere. My family was wrecked, and some people were able to handle that in a good way, some did not. I think many of my family members were very much in denial that it even happened, and some were able to heal and keep going. But the thing is, if you don't continuously grow from it, not saying you forget the person, that you just move on and forget about it, but you grow and you remember those good memories. You latch onto that and you honor their memory by continually growing yourself. And that's with anything you lose. You lose for a reason. That person is gone for a reason, and you might not understand that reason right now. And I'm not saying you should say that, because I really get very frustrated with people that say, well, God just called them home. Well, that doesn't help the situation now, does it? Here's the thing, we have to be very cognizant of how we try to comfort people. Putting catchy little phrases and stuff and just masking it as comfort or being helpful isn't helpful. So we should be very watchful of our words when we are trying to be comforting. We should have some empathy. Before we say stuff, we should think about it, process it, and then say something that we would want to be said to us. That's the thing we don't do a lot of times. I guarantee you, my cousins that lost their mother probably didn't want to hear, well, she's just in heaven, she's in a good place, just to remember that. They don't want to hear that. They want their mom back with them on earth. They want to hug on their mom. They want love on her. And that wasn't something they wanted to hear. I guarantee you that. You know, we tend to get in these catchy phrases because we are just used to it. This is what we just say. Just when someone breaks up with us, like, well, they weren't good for you anyways. You're better off without them. And the thing is, we don't want to hear that. We're like, no, we loved each other. We were great with each other. And maybe later on you might see that later on because maybe they were toxic, whatever it is. But the thing is, at the moment, we have to understand empathy. And as people that are dealing with brokenness, we also have to be honest. Don't just accept that kind of junk our way. Say, hey, you know what? I don't want to hear that. Understand me. And as people receiving that, we have to be understanding and share empathy, especially. But how do we move on? Necessarily, it's not about moving on. It's about growing and persevering and understanding our pain. We have to understand where this pain's coming from. It's coming from loss. It's coming from lack of control. And when we have no control of a situation, we tend to spiral. We tend to deal with harsh emotions. But that's what we have to identify. We have to ask ourselves those questions. Why am I feeling this way? What is this making me feel like? Why am I feeling this way? And then the question we should ask ourselves is, what should I do next? And sometimes the answer doesn't come from internal, it comes from God. It might come from a therapist. I would recommend that sometimes. It might come from someone who's trusted, who actually gives good, sound advice, who's mature. Because if you reach out to your friends during a breakup, they're just going to tell you what you want to hear. But reach out to that friend who's observed you the longest. Maybe it's a family member or a friend that knows you the most, and they can be honest and give you a really honest assessment of the situation. Because maybe they can identify, maybe, hey, you know what? You lost that job because you were lazy. You lost that relationship because you didn't care or you were very overbearing or whatever it was. And they can give you an honest assessment. That way, maybe you can improve and grow from it. But then again, maybe you were honestly great in that relationship. You were great in that job, and circumstances happen that you have no control over. And that's what that person's for. That's what a therapist is for, to help identify those things. That way you can grow, and yet that way you're not spinning in thought of, what could I have done differently? Well, the way you find that out is by asking questions. Asking questions of maybe your previous coworkers or family members or friends that know you well that can kind of identify that. Hey, how do I heal from this pain? How do I grow from this loss? How do I continue to live my life after I've lost someone or something that's important and special to me? And brokenness is okay at the moment. We all deal with brokenness in moments. But when you're living a life of brokenness, you're not going to grow. You're going to stifle any opportunity that comes your way. You're going to deal with situations that are just going to hit a wall every time because you are wallowing in your sorrow. You're digging yourself a pit that's continuously getting deeper and deeper and deeper. That's why you have to overcome brokenness. And the only way you overcome brokenness is by stepping out, recognizing the situation, asking the right questions, and start taking a step forward still. You don't have to take giant leaps. You don't have to take giant sprints, steps. One step at a time towards healing, one step at a time towards motivation, towards dedication, towards self improvement, towards your goals still. Maybe again, you're dealing with a death. Well, how do you grow from that? How do you persevere through a death, through someone you've lost that you love so much? Well, the best way to persevere is to remember them as they were and continue to live your life as if they were still alive. Because in all reality, that's what they would want from you, is for you to continue to strive and thrive, for you to stay where you're at, stay honestly stuck and cemented in pain, in sorrow, in depression. They don't want that for you. I promise you that. And then again, when it comes to any other pain and brokenness, you have to understand that they have moved on with their life. Especially if that person broke up with you, divorced you, filed for divorce, they've moved on. They're not considering you anymore. And maybe they are going through this a little bit of pain and regret, maybe, but overall, they've moved on, they've grown, they're persevering, and you might not know what they're dealing with too, obviously, but overall, if they're the ones that initiated it, they're moved on. So you should grow from that too. Take those lessons learned and continue to walk your path in life. Sitting on the bench, being sad, being depressed, all those things has a time and place and a timetable. You have a timetable to be sad. Absolutely. You have a right to be sad, to grieve, to mourn. But after that timetable, you should move through that timetable and take the next step into your new season, to your new chapter in life. You're allowed and allocated time to grieve, a time to regret, a time to deal with that pain and those emotions and everything. But once you have crossed that threshold of that timetable, then you have to start moving forward. Otherwise, it's not going to be helpful for you to grow as a person. It's not going to be helpful for you to keep looking back behind you at the past, at what could have been, what should have been, shoulda, woulda, coulda, all that. It's not going to be helpful for you to really mature and evolve as a person. And I'm going to guarantee you this. I've learned this myself. I've learned it the hard way and the easy way. Now, granted, the easy way was because of the hard way. So I've had to bump my head a few times, wallowing in my sorrow, to finally wake up and realize, okay, wallowing my sorrow doesn't do me any good. I had a breakup when I was in my 20s that rocked my world. It came out of nowhere. This girl that I had been dating and I thought everything was going well broke up with me shortly after her birthday. It was like 3 days after her birthday party, broke up with me, just out of the blue. And I had no clue it was coming. And it shocked me to my core, to the point where I had to take a few days off of work because I was so depressed. I locked myself in my room. I was just sad and I didn't eat. I couldn't sleep. And it affected me in such an adverse way. And I think about this now. It's like, well, what good did that do? Did that help me overcome? No. What helped me overcome was going back to work. What helped me overcome was getting back in the gym. What helped me overcome was continuously living my life. Now, the thing is that healing didn't happen automatically. It took time still. It was a process still. It took step by step, one thing after another, but eventually it took step by step, one step after another, but eventually it ended up working in the long run for me. And I met someone else, and I grew, and I matured, and I got not really over it, but I persevered through it. And you can too. You can persevere through this the hardest situations, the hardest circumstances, but you have to identify those things, allow yourself to grieve, but then take the step towards a positive direction to self improvement, self growth, self actualization, to understanding the situation and what you can learn from that situation. What can you learn from that relationship? What can you learn from that job loss? What can you learn from those situations that sometimes you have zero control in? So, bottom line up front here is when you deal with brokenness, when you deal with pain, when you deal with loss, the only way forward is understanding and stepping. That's it. How do I understand this? How do I make sense of this? And that's asking the right questions and then stepping forward, moving forward, one step at a time. It's not a leap, it's not a sprint, it's a step, one step. And guess what? That one step turns into two steps and then three steps. And then you find yourself actually taking a little jog and taking a run and then a marathon. And then you find yourself so far from that pain, that anguish, that frustration, that sadness, and you have found yourself in the healing zone. And that doesn't mean you don't forget it, you forget about it. It doesn't mean you don't ever think about it, but it doesn't affect you anymore. When you have moved forward in your progression past the pain, pain has no hold on you. The brokenness has no hold on you. It's still there, there's still scars, but the scars don't hurt. The scars don't cause triggers because you've healed and you've grown. And like I said before, it's not like you're getting over it, you're moving through it. You don't get around it, you go through it. That's the best way to ride the storm of life. Is not trying to get around it, not trying to pretend it's not there, but it's about trying to figure out how to get through it. How do you get through the storm? How do you get through the pain? How do you get through those situations that you really don't have control of? But how do you really find solace in that? That's the biggest question. How do you find peace in all of this? But before I close, I'm going to also give an encouragement to those who are trying to comfort someone else. So I'm going to say this: if you're trying to comfort someone who's dealing with pain, loss, brokenness, don't give them those catchy phrases. Don't be the person that's the keyboard warrior. Oh, here's a Bible verse that will help you. Here's a little quote that I found. Hopefully it helps you. And of course, those people will be polite. It's politeness. It's just trying to help, I guess, try to comfort. And we, as the people who are dealing with the brokenness, are trying to be polite back. Oh, thank you. That really helped. But it really didn't help. It just made things worse. It felt kind of dismissive, right? When you get a quote or a Bible verse or a catchy phrase, it's like, cool, thanks. Well, just, let go and let God. Or you know what? Just don't dwell on the past. You know what? You're better than this. You're better than him. You're better than her. You'll get over this. Just get over it. Move on. Move on with your life. You've heard those phrases. You hear those Bible verses or poems or quotes, and they sound good on paper. But emotionally, we're not ready for that. What we want to hear, people who are dealing with brokenness, is simply this: can you empathize and understand? And maybe it's saying, hey, you know what? I am so sorry you're dealing with this. I'm here for you. Imagine that as a response to brokenness instead of, well, here's this verse I read, here's this quote I saw, here's this thought I thought, here's this. No, just do it. Step back and consider this. Does what you have to say really bring value to the healing process? If it doesn't, just shut up. Don't say anything. Just be there. Be as a light, as a warmth to that person dealing with that brokenness. We've all been there, so why not be there for that person? Give them something that you wish you had when you're dealing with your brokenness. Well, anyways, I hope this helped you as you're dealing with your brokenness, your pain, your suffering, your situation. Maybe it's a breakup or divorce or a job loss, whatever your version of brokenness is, of sadness, of loss. Hopefully, this helps you to understand how you not get over it, but how you persevere through it, how you walk through it and continue to live your life in a way that's going to be more beneficial for you, but also the ones that are still alive and around you and connected to you. Anyways, I'm Coach AJ. Thanks for watching another episode of Living Fully Fit. If you enjoy content like this, make sure to subscribe down below, hit the like button, and hit the notification bell to receive more updates of content just like this. And if you know anybody who is dealing with a hardship or a heartache or any kind of loss, share this video with them as well, and hopefully it can be beneficial. And I would love to hear what you think. And if you have any questions or need some advice or some guidance, please send me a comment. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.